The Aztecs say they started from this place up in the north called Chiqui Mustac. It was a cave, and inside that cave, it had 7 different caverns. There's a secret hidden inside the bones of the Aztecs, and it's about to change history forever. We're going to talk about the terrifying truth their DNA has revealed. But you won't believe the sheer scale of their operation. We're talking about a genetic mystery that points to the complete disappearance of entire civilizations. The evidence is so shocking, it's forcing scientists to reconsider everything. The most disturbing part, the thing nobody tells you, is that this wasn't a random event. It was a deliberate, systematic plan, and the proof is undeniable. An empire's dirty secret. Deep in the heart of modern-day Mexico City, archaeologists have been digging through the ruins of an ancient Aztec world. For years, they found pottery, jewelry, and golden artifacts. But you see, none of these treasures can tell the whole story. The most shocking fact is that the real truth was hiding in something much smaller. Tiny fragments of bone. Scientists just got their hands on ancient DNA samples from Aztec sites, and what they found has turned history on its head. The traditional story of the Aztecs is one many people know. A nomadic tribe called the Mexica supposedly wandered south from a mythical land named Alan. Around the year 1300, they settled in the Valley of Mexico, building their incredible capital, Tenochtitlan, on an island in a lake. From there, they created one of the most powerful empires the Americas had ever seen. It's a straightforward tale of migration and empire building. But not all things are what they seem. When modern geneticists began analyzing DNA from ancient Aztec remains, they uncovered something far more complex and, to put it mildly, deeply disturbing. The major breakthrough happened when researchers successfully extracted mitochondrial DNA from bones found in Tlatelolco, the twin city of Tenochtitlan. Mitochondrial DNA is like a genetic passport passed down from mother to child, offering incredible clues about where ancient people came from and how they moved. What they discovered was a bombshell. The genetic signatures didn't line up with the neat origin story taught in textbooks. Instead, they pointed to a tangled web of population, movements, conquests, and something that can only be described as genetic replacement on a mind-boggling scale. And this was only the beginning. This is where the story takes a truly dark turn. A beautiful lake city named Zaltacan holds one of the most chilling genetic mysteries in Mesoamerican history. Before the Aztecs came to power, Zaltocan was the thriving capital of the Otoy people. These weren't just simple villages. They were a sophisticated civilization with their own language and culture. And they had lived in the Valley of Mexico for centuries. Then the Aztecs showed up. What happened next is something historians have debated for generations. One day the Atomi people were there living their lives. The next, they seemed to have just vanished from the historical record. Poof, gone. For years, there were 2 main theories. 1, they peacefully mixed with the Aztecs. 2, they simply packed up and moved away. Both sound reasonable. But the thing nobody tells you is that the DNA evidence points to a far more sinister reality. The genetic data sent chills down researchers' spines. DNA samples from before the Aztec conquest showed one clear genetic signature, the Otomi. But samples from after the conquest told a completely different story. The original Otomi genetic markers had all but disappeared. In their place, scientists found DNA that matched people from hundreds of miles away. It was as if the entire original population had been swapped out. This wasn't a gradual change. This was a wholesale population replacement, a genetic vanishing act. The terrifying implications of this were just starting to sink in. But how widespread was this chilling practice of replacement? Masters of demographics. What the DNA findings truly mean is hard to even wrap your head around. Imagine if within a few years, genetic tests showed that everyone in your state had completely different ancestry than the original inhabitants. That's essentially what the evidence suggests happened in Zeltoan. And what many overlooked is that this wasn't a one-time event. The University of Texas researchers who led the study were blunt. The Aztec conquest didn't just change politics. It fundamentally re-engineered the genetic landscape of central Mexico. And you can see this everywhere they looked. As more ancient DNA samples were analyzed from sites across the former empire, a horrifying pattern emerged. Time and time again, original populations with unique genetic signatures were systematically replaced by people with totally different ancestral backgrounds. The sheer scale of this genetic transformation suggests something far beyond normal conquest. Researchers now call it demographic replacement, which is a scientific way of saying one of the largest and perhaps most forced population displacements in pre-Columbian American history. Think about the logistics for a moment. To completely erase and replace the genetic signature of an entire region requires moving massive numbers of people over hundreds of miles. The Aztecs weren't just ruling over the people they conquered. They were actively reshaping the very demographic makeup of their empire. Some experts have even started using the term genetic colonization. This wasn't just a military takeover. It was a systematic population swap on a scale that rivals some of the most dramatic events in human history. This brings us to one of the biggest plot twists. Remember the Aztec origin story about coming from a mythical homeland called Alan? Well, the DNA evidence now suggests this wasn't just a myth. It might be the key to understanding this massive population movement. Recent genetic studies have identified distinct Y chromosome groups that act like genetic breadcrumbs, tracing ancient peoples as they moved across the continent. What researchers discovered is that the genetic diversity among Aztec descendants is enormous, far more diverse than you'd expect. They found haplogroups labeled QMY422, QM3, QZ768, and many more. These aren't just random letters and numbers. They are distinct genetic signatures that tell a story of multiple waves of migration and population mixing on a truly massive scale. The most shocking fact is that this diversity suggests the Aztecs weren't a single people at all. They appear to have been a complex coalition of different groups who came together to form the empire. But the DNA patterns indicate they didn't come together peacefully. Instead, the evidence points to rapid large-scale population movements that just so happened to coincide with the disappearance of the original inhabitants from sites all across central Mexico. Some geneticists now believe the Aztec expansion involved organized population transfers so vast the logistical planning would rival modern military operations. They weren't just conquerors. They were demographic engineers with a dark blueprint. But what happened to the millions of people who were replaced, a legacy rewritten? As more DNA evidence has come to light, researchers have started piecing together the empire's darkest secret. The genetic data doesn't just show that original populations disappeared. It shows exactly what replaced them. And the pattern is chillingly consistent. Original inhabitants with local genetic signatures were replaced by people carrying genetic markers from the Aztec heartland and its allied regions. This wasn't random. The evidence points to a coordinated effort, a form of genetic imperialism. So what happened to all those original inhabitants? The genetic record suggests several possibilities, and none of them are good. Some may have been forcibly relocated to faraway regions. Others might have been scattered across the empire to break up local resistance. However, there's a third possibility that the evidence increasingly supports: the systematic elimination of local populations. The complete and total disappearance of certain genetic family lines from specific regions suggests demographic catastrophes that go far beyond what you'd expect from a typical conquest. Recent studies of Y chromosome diversity and Aztec descendant populations have revealed something particularly disturbing. Certain genetic lineages that should be there based on pre-conquest populations are completely missing from modern descendants. It's as if entire family trees were chopped down and removed from the genetic forest. What many overlooked is that this pattern of missing genes isn't random. It's concentrated in regions that were key targets for Aztec expansion. The implications are deeply unsettling. It suggests the rise of the Aztec Empire came at a human cost that historians are only now beginning to comprehend. Through this genetic time machine, the DNA is forcing a fundamental rethinking of one of the most important civilizations in history. For generations, the Aztec Empire has been portrayed as a story of skilled warriors who created a tribute-based system. But the genetic evidence doesn't support a story of simple assimilation. It suggests systematic demographic engineering. This revelation has sparked intense debate. Some argue this proves the Aztecs were even more sophisticated than believed, capable of incredible logistical planning. Others see the DNA as evidence of a much darker legacy, raising troubling questions about the empire's methods. Recent studies have also begun to examine how these genetic changes affected culture. The replacement of genes seems to have coincided with the disappearance of local languages, art, and religious practices. Entire cultures appear to have vanished right along with their genetic signatures. This wasn't just conquest. It was a rewriting of history, one gene at a time. This forces us to ask a very uncomfortable question. Are we missing a key detail? People watching this are looking for a mystery. And the thing is, the mystery is right here in the data. Was all of this a deliberate calculated policy of erasure? The evidence is strong, but huge questions still haunt this story. History's new Rosetta Stone. Even with these groundbreaking discoveries, enormous mysteries still hang in the air. The genetic evidence has revealed the what, but not the how or the why. And that's where things start to get truly strange. One of the biggest unanswered questions is the exact fate of the displaced populations. The DNA shows with chilling precision that entire groups vanished from their ancestral lands almost overnight. But where did they go? Were they marched away as captives, scattered across the empire, or erased in ways we can barely imagine? You'd expect their genetic fingerprints to show up somewhere, hundreds of miles away in neighboring valleys or along the coasts. But so far, the silence is deafening. Some researchers have started whispering about the unthinkable. What if these people didn't go anywhere? What if they were absorbed in ways that left no trace? Through forced assimilation, ritual, destruction, or even something more ritualistic, something darker? After all, this was an empire that built its power on sacrifice and symbolism. What if the population shifts weren't just political? They were spiritual, engineered to reshape not just the empire, but the genetic destiny of its people. Another puzzle is the sheer logistics of it all. Moving hundreds of thousands of people across rugged terrain would have required monumental resources, food, water, shelter, and security. Yet, the archaeological record remains eerily clean. No vast migration camps, no trails of discarded pottery or broken tools, nothing. It's as if these huge movements happened invisibly. A few radical theorists have suggested the Aztecs might have used systems we don't yet understand. Hidden road networks, subterranean routes, or organized relocations along now-buried river systems. Others go even further, proposing that these disappearances could point to large-scale deaths through famine, disease, or even deliberate depopulation, a form of ancient biological warfare to clear and repopulate entire regions with loyal citizens. And then there's the most baffling part, the speed. Population replacement on this scale should take centuries, not decades. But the DNA patterns say otherwise. It's as if entire genetic lineages were overwritten in a single generation. How could such a thing happen? Some scientists argue that the Aztecs may have engineered it through forced intermarriage and rapid assimilation, blending conquered peoples until their distinct identities disappeared. But others suspect something far stranger. A sudden environmental or cosmic event that wiped out certain groups while sparing others. Volcanic eruptions, climate shifts, or even diseases introduced from unknown origins could explain the sudden change. But there's also a more chilling possibility. What if it wasn't nature at all? What if it was deliberate? Certain Aztec myths speak of the gods remaking humanity, of cycles where old worlds were destroyed and new ones created from the remains. Could those stories have a real world echo? Could the Aztec rulers have believed they were fulfilling a divine mandate to literally reshape their people? To erase the old bloodlines and replace them with new ones they saw as purer, stronger, more divine? It sounds impossible until you remember that every major empire in history has rewritten its people one way or another. Maybe the Aztecs simply took that rewriting to the next level. These discoveries are just the start of what might become a full-blown scientific revolution. Ancient DNA analysis is evolving so fast that today's methods will look like stone tools in a few years. Scientists are now developing techniques to extract human genetic information from environmental samples, soil, bones, even the dust in long-abandoned temples. Imagine being able to test the dirt beneath a pyramid and instantly know who lived there, when they vanished, and who replaced them. It's no longer science fiction. It's the next phase of archaeology, an era when history will be rewritten by molecules instead of manuscripts. And as new projects spring up across the world, researchers are starting to notice familiar patterns: disappearing populations, sudden replacements, genetic shocks that seem to follow empire building everywhere. Maybe this wasn't just an Aztec phenomenon. Maybe it was part of a global system, an unspoken law of ancient power. Some even suggest that what we're seeing might not be entirely human in origin, that certain genetic shifts appear too clean, too precise, as if guided by something beyond natural selection. It's a wild theory, but what if the Aztecs weren't just reshaping humanity? They were continuing a process that started long before recorded history. A process handed down, maybe even taught by an earlier civilization lost to time. The DNA evidence has rewritten the story of the Aztecs into something far more complex and sinister. What other dark secrets are buried in the genomes of ancient empires? Like and subscribe for more shocking historical truths.